Hi, I know some of you are newer to Photoshop, so I kind of wanted to go over this worksheet and talk about Photoshop a little bit. I'll do videos almost every week, so feel free to email me any tools that aren't making sense to you, anything you'd like to go over, and we'll slowly get used to all of these different buttons, layouts, and functions in Photoshop. So really quickly, I will put this document on the class wall so that you all have it. Unfortunately, it wasn't in the kind of weekly assignment section. But so this is Photoshop. If you go to File and New, this is generally how we open up all of our pieces. I just want you to be aware of setting the width and height. You can do portrait or landscape. You can set it to inches. Most of the time we're going to be dealing with inches, obviously pixels for the internet. Inches more for print, but a lot of time we can convert it. The resolution is how clear do you want it to be. 300 pixels per inch is a really good resolution. That's a high resolution. If you go lower, you might start to see some pixels. If you go higher, you're just really increasing the size of your document. We've got color mode here. We have RGB, CMYK, and grayscale are the three most common. RGB is red, green, and blue. Those are the three colors that are used digitally. So if you're looking at your computer screen, everything that you're seeing is made out of red, green, and blue light. If you mix equal amounts of red, green, and blue, you get white, which is crazy to think about, but true. And if you have the absence of light, you get black. So think about it when your computer or phone are shut off. It's black because there's no light showing. CMYK is for print. Those are the four colors that deal in ink. If you were to mix cyan, magenta, and yellow, you'd get a brown. So that's why we have to include that black channel or K here. All right, background content's white. That's generally how we deal with. But that's how you open up your new documents. So I want to go over some of the things that your worksheet is going to assign, but I want to kind of just go about the skills that you'll need to do it rather than step by step doing it. So it starts by saying make a new layer named work and set the mode of the layer to multiply. Over here is our layers panel. You can see there's already layers in here, but we've got the delete layer, looks like a trash can. New layer looks like a sheet of paper. Then we have grouping, masking, all that kind of stuff. But if you're ever kind of confused, if you leave your mouse over a button, it'll tell you generally what the button is. So create new layer. They're always going to be called layer 1 or whatever layer you're on. You can double click to rename. And then layer modes are up here. So it's set to normal. These are blending modes here, and what they do is take into account two layers. So you have to have two layers for a blending mode to work. These we'll figure out, like, so darken. Darken takes the pixels of the two layers and always picks the one that's darkest. So you'll have this kind of mix. I would highly recommend just bringing in two images, laying them on top of each other, and then trying to change the blending mode on the top one. We also have the opacity here, so if you ever want to lower the opacity on an entire layer, this is where you're going to want to do it. So for example, you can lower the opacity to your entire layer. Okay? So over here, we have your toolbar. If you are brand new to Photoshop, this can seem a little overwhelming, but again, if you hold your mouse over it, it'll tell you what it does and does a little quick video of how it actually works. So pretty cool. Your move tool is hotkey V. I would get really used to using the hotkey for move. It's going to be really beneficial in the long run. You don't have to keep toggling to click over. But so I'm on my ellipse layer here. If I hit V or click on the tool, I can now click and move this wherever I want. Command or Control Z always is to undo. If you have an older version of Photoshop, you might have to click Command Control Z to undo if you have multiple undos, but they fixed it or updated it in the most recent Creative Cloud, so now you can just Command Z to your heart's content. Alright, so we've got right underneath is our marquee tools. These are selections that are just your standard shapes, so a rectangle or a circle. You can do a single row marquee. I generally don't use the single row quite as much, but these are to make selections. A lot of Photoshop is making selections, so I can have my rectangle tool here, click and drag out. Now I have a selection. These little marching ants, that's what I call them, are your selection. Once you have a selection, you can delete from it, you can paint inside it, you can clone stamp things. Really, the possibilities are endless, and you want to get comfortable making selections. So for example, I'll go back to my work layer here. If I grab my brush tool, I can paint wherever I want, and you can see it's only painting inside the selection. On the other hand, if you make a selection, you can go to Select, Inverse, and you'll only be able to paint outside of that selection. All right? You can do Command or Control D to deselect. You want to make sure when you're done with the selection that you actually deselect. A lot of times I'll have a tiny selection and I won't understand why I'm not able to do anything, and it's because I'm not actually coloring inside my selection. All right, we have your lasso tools. I would suggest that you take a look at these. They're ways to make a selection. Lasso tool is kind of free form. You'll just click and drag. The second one here is on line, so you click and let go. And with selections, you always want to end where you started. So if I'm starting here, I can click however many times I want, but when I go to finish, you'll see there's that little circle, so I can finish and make it an actual selection. Your magnetic lasso takes into account pixel information, so see how I have the red versus the white? If I click and let go and then start to click and drag, it's trying its best to stay on that edge there. Now you can see it got a little off down here, and if you go crazy with your mouse, it pulls away, but it's pretty good with actually finding the pixel information. A lot of these tools are going to be more beneficial when we're dealing with actual photographs because it can find all of that detailed information. All right, so I thought I'd actually show with an image. This is my dog Norman. But moving along with the tools, we have our quick selection tool and our magic wand tool. These are probably going to be the most beneficial to you. Hotkey W, basically what these take into account is the pixel information, aka what color's inside a pixel. So if I start here and click and drag, you can see that Photoshop is grabbing the pixels that are close in color to what I have selected. Now with any of these tools that we use, you want to look in this top toolbar up here because there are different options that you'll be able to pick with these. You can always add to your selection by holding Shift. This is with any of the tools. You can take away from your selection by hitting Alt or Option. And then again, once you have the selection, you can delete from it, you can paint on it, you can copy and paste it, whatever you would like. Now the quick select is a click and drag. So I'm clicking and dragging to grab the colors that I want. You can see how fast and easy it is. The magic wand, you click and let go, and it tries to grab any colors in the region that it thinks are close to that original color. If you change the tolerance up here, it can grab more or less variance from that original color pixel that you grabbed. Okay, so for example, if I change the tolerance to 5, you can see it's only grabbing that one pixel. If I change it to 40, it's grabbing a lot bigger of a range. All right, so those are your main selection tools. I understand that I went through them very quickly, so please don't hesitate to email me any questions or anything you'd like to go over in more detail. So select the white space in box 1 and fill it with a yellow hue. Make sure that no white or clear pixels remain between the fill color and the black outline of the box. Okay, and then the channels palette. So you could either, we know that this is kind of a rectangle shape, so you may want to do this and make sure that you've got it really on the line. And then you can either paint, so you can hit B for your brush tool. Once you have your brush, you can see mine's rather large. You can use the brackets next to P to make it larger or smaller. You'll see up here, we can click this little down arrow. You can change the size up here, but I find the brackets are much better because I don't know what a 900 pixel brush looks like. I have to actually visually see it. Hardness is, do you want a feather to the brush or do you want a harsh edge? So we're at a hardness of 100 right now. And then let me go to a hardness of 0. Okay, so see the difference between those two? So I'll just turn this up. And then you've got some brushes here, but you've got the same blending modes, normal, opacity, etc. So you can paint in there, or if you want, you can go to this where the gradient tool is and do your paint bucket tool, and that'll kind of just fill the area. One of the steps does talk about the gradient tool. Once you click on it, you'll see in here you can create your own gradient. We've got linear or radial. You just kind of want to click on one of them and then you'll be able to create your own colors here. These I call hangers. So you can click and drag down to remove any hangers, and you can just click on the bottom right here, right under this bar, to bring up a new hanger. You can, once you've clicked on a hanger, you can change the color. It's a pretty gross color. Go to something a little lighter. Yeah, and so we can do that throughout. The top here is your ability to change the opacity. And these little diamonds here are where do you want the midpoints to be. So for example, let me drop this down, change this to black. So if we move the midpoint, it's, do you want it to be closer to black or closer to yellow? Okay? And then once you have the gradient that you would like, it's a click and drag. Now you want to be in a new layer or a selection to be able to do it because it takes over the entire layer. So if you had a selection first, or if you want to work with a new layer, you can do that. Once you have a layer, this isn't necessarily necessary for the assignment, but Command T is a free transform. From there, you can scale, you can rotate, you can skew, whatever you would like. You just need to hit enter or hit this checkbox to set it. Okay, and again, I don't know how familiar you guys are with all of these tools. We'll be going over some of them, well, any of them again, but I just want to give you kind of a range. Alright, so now it talks about channels palette. So anytime you make a selection, we can save it into the channels palette. So for example, I'm going to make a shape here. I'm going to hit B for my brush tool. You can double click the color here to select whatever color you would like to fill it with. And then we can paint inside our square here. Okay, so then we can go to channels over here. It breaks it down into RGB. This is from earlier. So once you have the selection, if you go into channels, you can create a new layer and you can see it's going to have your selection still. And we can paint this with white to kind of save it. Box 1. If you don't see white, again, you can click here and just choose white. And then go back into layers. It'll be red because you're still in that channel layer. But if you just click on it, it goes away, and then you can continue to work the same. All right, so I think now we've covered most of the things here. Blending, you can do, we have got the smudge tool here where you can actually kind of pull color. This is one that we'll really use in our digital painting. There are different wet brushes that you can use, but I'm going to let you kind of explore that one, see what you come up with. But again, if you have any questions, please let me know, and good luck with this first worksheet. I'll talk to you soon.